The year was 1978 and the stars twinkled overhead. Jeff sipped on warm beer and growled, "I can't believe I forgot my fucking cooler." His girlfriend Sandra rolled her eyes. "Don't worry about that, babe," Sandra said. "We're both out here alone." Jeff smiled while wrapping his arm around Sandra and pulling her against his hard body. She gazes up at the shimmering stars above and utters oohs and ahs. "Don't you feel so small in the grand scheme of things?" Sandra asked. Jeff shakes his head. "I don't really think about it," Jeff responds. "I'd love to be an astronomer," Sandra says. Jeff belched. "I'd love another beer." She shook her head. "You can be so boorish at times," Sandra said. Jeff got up, reached into his book bag and pulled out another beer. He cracked it open and took a sip. He walked back over to the campfire. The crickets chirp. Darkness fills the forest. Jeff sits down and places his arm back around Sandra. "This is a perfect night for a ghost story," Jeff said with a grin. Sandra turned around to face Jeff. "Oh please," Sandra begged, her hazel eyes shimmering. 10 years ago," began Jeff, "Granny Simmons took a hatchet." "That's enough," Sandra said. "I swear to God I'll break up with you." Jeff rolled his eyes. "This is the 10-year anniversary of Granny Simmons butchering those two campers." Sandra shivered. "I don't want to think about that." "They say her ghost still haunts these woods," Jeff whispered. Sandra let out a scream. "Jesus, babe, you almost gave me a heart attack," said Jeff. Sandra smiled. "I guess we're even then." "I'll be back," Jeff whispers. Jeff whispers, "Nature calls." Jeff heads off into the woods. Sandra watches the fire. After a significant amount of time passes, Sandra stands up and calls out, "Jeff, you okay?" There was no reply. She heads off toward the direction she saw Jeff wander off to earlier. A figure emerges from the shrubbery, and Sandra screams, only to find Jeff. "Oh, thank God," Sandra said. "I was worried something happened." "I wasn't gone that long," Jeff said. Sandra let out a sigh, her breast rising and falling. "I guess that your story got to me," Sandra admitted. "It was just a stupid story," Jeff told her. "Don't let it get to you." A little while later, Jeff doused the fire, and Sandra and he retired to their tent for sleep. They fell asleep, and Sandra began to dream. She screamed as she found Jeff's head rolled up in a sleeping bag. Sandra woke up sweating and still screaming. All the while, Jeff remained asleep. She rolled over and wrapped her arm around Jeff's waist. His rhythmic breathing brought comfort to Sandra. She started to fall back asleep when she heard the tent being unzipped. "Jeff," Sandra said, shaking her sleeping boyfriend. She cried out and continued to watch the tent being opened. "Jeff!" she shouted with alarm. "Someone is trying to break into our tent!"